Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, we're going to talk Mavericks Suns, which was the fun game that happened on the first night back from All-Star break. Then we're going to talk about this weird Doc Rivers accountability thing that occurred. Then we're going to answer your NBA draft questions. Come join us today. We're going to have a fun show.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. We're here. Bryce Simon is with me. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Dave said I need that Kai Jones dunk to get me energized and juiced. And man, it happens every time, Sam. Like, that was well done putting that dunk in there. I've just spent 8 hours at parent-teacher conferences. As the teacher, I took an hour break to go be a parent during those and see how my own kids were doing. So it's been a long afternoon and evening, but I'm excited to talk basketball. And Dave, that Kai Jones dunk absolutely got my juices flowing, got me ready to go. So I'm excited to talk some hoops with Sam.
I love it. Shout out Eric Collins, just the most excitable announcer working today in the NBA. Okay, so we've got a packed show. I did want to start with the Suns-Mavs game because I thought it was a really interesting opening night game back from the All-Star break. By the way, basketball's back. How cool is that?
It's back. We got NBA. The best part of the college basketball season is quickly approaching for my money with conference tournaments, March Madness, all of that, the stretch run to the NBA. This is prime basketball season.
It's the best. But I thought the Suns-Mavs game would be really interesting just because these are two teams that made semi-real shake-up moves at the deadline, right? The Suns go out, they get Royce O'Neal, they get David Roddy. You and I have long been skeptical on how valuable David Roddy can be in a playoff series on an NBA court, frankly. Yeah. We'll see if he's valuable at all. But Royce O'Neal, played closing minutes for the Suns tonight. I turned it off with a minute left, so I guess I shouldn't say he closed the game, but he was in there in the fourth quarter throughout
30 total minutes. 30 total minutes, Sam.
Awesome. And the Mavericks made these two massive shakeup deals with Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. And like I said, whenever we did the deadline show, I loved the Daniel Gafford move. I thought it was such a home run for them to get 48 minutes of great rim running, center play, being able to have somebody that Luka can have as a lob threat constantly and having a real interior defensive presence in there all the time. I was less high on the PJ Washington move, if only because I thought it limited them asset-wise and thought that PJ might not necessarily be worth a first-round pick from them, given what their asset chest looked like. But the more I thought about it, the more I actually really love the way that this team is kind of constructed now, as long as Maxi Kleber can stay healthy and they can do a few different things with their lineups now in the front court. You can go big with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, one of them on the court at once with PJ Washington or with Maxi Kleber, or you can go small with PJ Washington and Maxi Kleber together on the court at the same time. You can switch everything. They got Maxi to guard Kevin Durant, I thought reasonably well at moments tonight. PJ Washington, I thought did a great job dealing with Kevin Durant. He got blown by once in the fourth quarter for a layup, but PJ has always been pretty good on the ball. If he can get his chest in front of you and can use that length to contest, he's pretty impactful and pretty effective because he's strong and he can move his feet reasonably well. The questions with PJ have always just been kind of off the ball and whether or not he can handle consistent rotations and consistently be engaged in the play. But I think these two moves, the more that I've thought about them, really position Dallas kind of exceptionally well. And when I went on Hoops Tonight earlier this week with Jason Temp, we recorded for 2 hours. We talked a lot about, all of the contenders. And Jason didn't get to the Mavs until like number 11. And I say this with love because I truly think the world of Jason and love him. But like, he didn't get to the Mavs until number 11. And when I told him that I would have the Mavs at number 5 right now, he was like, wait, what? And I don't blame him. But here's the thing. I think we saw a lot of what I love potentially about the Mavs in a playoff series tonight. Luka Doncic is Luka Doncic, and he is utterly unbelievable. I mean, Bryce, like that 3-minute stretch at the start of the second half, like, just please talk to me about that. That was unbelievable. It felt like.
Yeah, so I haven't got to watch like all of this and dissect all of it, but I got to see that where he just puts it all. Like the thing is, Sam, when he's knocking down threes like he did in that stretch, forget about it. But then I think he missed one. They got an offensive rebound. He attacks the defense right away, and then Josh Green gets a 3. And then he also operated a pick and pop, and this plays into what you're talking about. He operates a pick and pop with PJ Washington, and this is why it makes PJ really effective offensively. Like you said, whether he's playing the 4 or the 5, you can put him in the ball screen, he picks and pops, and he can knock down that shot. So you give Luka these other options to go to in these situations, along with what he can do. And then I don't know who was doing the game for sure, but they talked about, I think it was the final 3 he made. He actually made the step back or sidestep going to his right. So Luke is really good, like jab at you and then going to his left into that, which most righties do feel more comfortable with that. He made that one sidestepping, jab stepping, step backing, whatever you want to say, going to his right. And it was just ridiculous. So and the thing was, Sam, the Suns missed all of their shots, or the Mavericks got stops, however you want to say it, during that stretch. And it just exemplified everything that Luka was doing offensively. And he got Derek Lively out in transition too a couple times that got, drew fouls.
Yeah, it was just a quick 16-0 run from Dallas to start the second half. So 11:25, Luka makes a catch and shoot 3, if I remember correctly, from Josh Green. 11 or right around the 11-minute mark, Luka makes another 27-footer, this time a step back. Next possession down the court, he drills PJ Washington on a kick out for an open 3. Next possession down the court, I believe, he drills another 23-foot step back 3. Then the next possession down the court, he misses that little runner, and then PJ gets the offensive rebound, kicks it out to him. He drills Josh Green for a 3.
That's what it was. He missed a runner. Okay.
Then the next possession down is he grabs a defensive rebound and throws like a freaking like 75-foot hit ahead to Derek Lively like it's nothing. Yep. It's just like, what in the world are we doing here? He is unbelievable when he gets rolling like that. But oh, by the way, he had Kyrie tonight too. And this is the big thing that I think, multiple pieces of the Kyrie puzzle cloud this, from his vaccination status to the way he exited Cleveland and Boston to, this, that, and the other thing. Kyrie Irving is unbelievable at basketball. He is unbelievable at basketball. And that first quarter stretch at the end of the first, where he just like completely took over there and got going. I mean, it's just so hard to stop Dallas when one of those two has an avalanche going like that. And the thing is that it's very likely that one of those guys is going to have an avalanche like that, it feels like. Where are you at on the Mavs right now as they kind of step into this, what they hope, I guess, is like a contention window with all of these moves that they've made?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, when those moves were first made that day, I was like, okay, this stuff makes sense. I like this, right? Like the 48 minutes at center between Gafford and Lively. I've always kind of liked PJ Washington, and I know there's defensive concerns there, but I'm like, you're not going to be a great defense anyway. Can you just really dive into the offense, and then maybe you get in the playoffs and these guys that are kind of bad defenders in the regular season maybe become neutral defenders with rim protection behind them. I hadn't really thought about the long-term ramifications as much. So when we got on and you kind of talked about that, that made sense. The thing is, if you really become a contender, I think I can live with the long-term ramifications a little bit more. But like to your point, Kyrie and Luka combined for 70 points tonight on 25 of 45 and 11 of 19 from 3. Like, you have two really elite basketball players in the backcourt there. I like Josh Green. I think he's a nice player. I think Derek Jones Jr. has had a decent season. But the thing, like, Tim Hardaway Jr. didn't even have a good night tonight. As much as we've talked about Lively and Gafford, they combined for 9 points and 9 rebounds tonight. So it's not even like, again, I haven't watched the game. Box score doesn't say everything, but it's not like you even got like every other player's best tonight. Luka and Kyrie's elite play was enough. Imagine what they do to the Suns if Lively or Gafford or Tim Hardaway Jr.'s on a really good night or something like that. So I haven't gone through and said like I would have them top 5 or 5th like you, but I can see where they're at least in this conversation. I don't know where I'd have them ranked, but it's an interesting team.
So the reason that I think I'm high on them is that Luka and Kyrie are almost always going to have it in the playoffs, just like point blank. We have a good understanding of who those guys are in the playoffs. Surrounding them, they have shooters, they have rim runners, and they also have like real two-way players now. So like,
sure,
PJ Washington, say whatever you will about his off-ball defense, he can guard on the ball for the most part and like be fine. And I think if you have him like fully engaged, like you would be in a playoff series, he's going to be useful for them. And you can play him both as like a small ball big with Maxey, or you can play him at the 4 like they did tonight, especially later in the game against Kevin Durant. You have the rim protection with Lively and Gafford, 48 minutes if you want it, or you can go small at times. They have real lineup flexibility in their front court to be able to play drop, to be able to play a switching defense. They can play like more of a catch drop with Lively if they want to stay bigger out there. They have real versatility on the defensive end now. On top of it, you have Josh Green, who has turned into a really tough, energetic on-ball defender who can knock down his shots from distance. You have Derek Jones Jr., who, an inconsistent shooter, but there are going to be games in the playoffs where he has it going as a shooter and where his defense and his energy and his cutting ability are going to make him like a pretty useful two-way player. Then Dante Exum is still not healthy yet.
Oh, yeah.
I loved what we saw from Dante on both ends earlier this season and thought he looked like a real guy that could help them in the playoffs. So that's like 4 separate guys there that are all potential interesting two-way guys to surround Kyrie and Luka with on top of the bigs. So when I look at this roster, I think it just translates really, really well to playoff basketball. Like I would have them ahead of, I know that Oklahoma City has like a better record than they do. And I know that they just, utterly kicked the shit out of I think they played the Clippers, right? Tonight.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Beat them by 22, right? Like I would have them ahead of the Thunder right now in terms of like a finals contender, because I trust Kyrie as the second option a little bit more than I trust Jalen Williams as a second option right now. I love Jalen Williams, as most people know, but I really think that Kyrie is just a little bit ahead offensively where he's at. I love their two-way play, and they have the depth on the interior to kind of manage the like teams that are going to deal with them and just try to like kick their ass on the inside. I think this is actually just like a really well-rounded team at the end of the day.
It will be interesting how the roster shakes out in the playoffs, because this is going to come down to the coach making the right decisions, right? Like you got to get the right guys in the right games, because I think we just kind of named off 10 guys or so, Sam, for the Mavericks who could be in the rotation, but you're probably not going to play those guys. So can you press the right buttons? Can you go small whenever you need to go small? Can you go big when you need to go big? Is it Josh Green or Derek Jones Jr. or Dante Exum? You're going to have to push the right buttons in those situations. Can you find the right lineup against, okay, the first round they're playing whoever, and then the second round it's a completely different team. They get the Timberwolves in the semis, super big. Can you do you go big with them, or do you go small to kind of counter that? And then you meet the Nuggets in the finals. Well, who do you put on Jokic? How do you play that? Can you put PJ on Jokic and let Lively roam off the ball? I'm just saying, like, it's the options are there, the versatility is there. Can you push the right buttons at the right times in each of those series? That may be what it comes down to, and whether you trust the coaching staff to do that.
So this is true.
Yeah.
And this is also true here. We're going to say like Chet is way better than the Mavs' third best player. I 100% agree with that. I am totally in agreement with you on that, Brian, when you say that. Shout out Brian from the comments. The thing is that I'm very interested to see how Chet is officiated in the playoffs and how it works on the defensive end for him in the playoffs. I think the world of Chet. I think the world of his toughness and his willingness to like be as like mentally just engaged in every single moment of a game as he is. And he's a hyper competitor and I love him. But like, let's say he gets in foul trouble in like 2 games in this series, right? Like where do they go next? Like what do they do is kind of my question. And this is why like I liked the idea of them going out and getting a big. I don't know that I love like a smaller team having to deal with like Luka driving to the paint all the time and dominating the ball in the way that he does, and Kyrie's finishing ability and the constant threat that Dallas is going to throw at you, rim running and everything. Like I think that is a real potential factor for them. I love Oklahoma City and what they're building. And I think that long term, Oklahoma City is in a drastically better position than where Dallas is. I just wonder if for this season, with the way these rosters are built, if Dallas actually just kind of has a few more answers in terms of being able to adjust to some things as compared to Oklahoma City right now.
I mean, I'm in for that series though. Like, give me SGA and Luka dueling and J-Dub trying to match what Kyrie's doing and the defense of that. And here's the other thing. Like, we can talk about the Mavs flaw. We've talked about potential Thunder flaws in the playoffs as well, right? I just went on an OKC podcast and we talked about what are they going to do with Josh Giddey come playoff time? Is he going to be able to stay on the floor or not? If he's not, what's the answer? Like, I love the Gordon Hayward move. Is that the answer? Is it Isaiah Joe? You're counting on rookie Cason Wallace. You're counting on rookie Chet Holmgren. Again, like you just said in the comments, nobody's been higher and more excited about the Thunder. I feel like we've given them as much love as you can possibly give a team, but it's not like they're without questions as well whenever it comes to the playoffs. And that's what we're talking about. Just playoff basketball, having different options, having versatility of things, all of that. And again, then can your coaching staff push the right buttons, make the adjustments within a series? If you go down 2-0 with this scheme, can you change it up? And then do you have the players to do something different? And so that's what it'll really come down to. I don't know. We have the answers. Like, we think the Mavericks roster looks like it can have that. Does it hold up? Can PJ play good defense? And yes, like I realize Jokic would crush PJ Washington. Like, it was just an example of something. But you know,
it's trying to figure out like how you would attack their defense. Basically.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Do you have the super help? Do you have
exactly
like, you know, do you just throw a PJ on him to like throw a body on him and then have a help man come over? It's hard to do that against Denver.
Yeah.
Because of who, you know, they have surrounding Jokic, right? Like,
exactly.
Basically, I think you have to guard him with one of the bigs and just like hope that it works. But nonetheless, like, you want all of that. Yeah, I mean, look, someone mentioned that Chet hasn't fouled out in his career yet. That's absolutely true. But in the games where Chet has at least 4 fouls this year, he's done that 14 times. It's been against good teams for the most part. Dallas, Minnesota, the Clippers, Miami, New York, Minnesota, Sacramento, Golden State twice, Cleveland, the Lakers, and New Orleans. So like those are all playoff teams. I think that's 12 of the 14 times he's had 4 fouls. I just say all of this that I think that this is going to be I think this would be like a really interesting playoff matchup. I really do. And I think I would pick Dallas at the end of the day with it, even though I think it would be tight. Like it's really good. And yeah, like Jokic, you know, they're going to, you know, Denver is the clear favorite to win the title right now. So it doesn't really matter, but it'll be interesting to see how all of this works, because they're 8-6 in those games where he has 4 fouls or more this year, which is much worse than where their overall record is this year.
Well, with this Mavericks team being good, it just makes the West so much more fun, right? Like, I think we have questions about what Minnesota looks like in the playoffs. OKC, at the very least, they haven't been there, right? Like we all love SGA, we love Chet, we love J-Dub. We haven't seen it in a playoff setting yet. The Clippers,
That's it too.
The Nuggets, someone just said it. Like I have had questions from the beginning of the season, and I still do, about their depth. Now we're talking about the Mavs. The Suns still have KD and Book, potentially, Bill if he's healthy.
Yeah, let's shift there because the Suns didn't have Bradley Beal tonight. Yep. And I think that's a really, really important piece of this. They really need him.
Yeah.
Like that's where I'm at on the Suns. Like they desperately need Bradley Beal to be healthy and like to be rolling in the playoffs, because when it got tough tonight, it was basically just like the KD and Booker show. And the Mavs did a great job just, either switching actions or staying in front of those guys. Book was quite good throughout the entirety of this game. Kevin Durant struggled a little bit more than what is, normal for what his standard is. KD is unbelievable. But if one of those two isn't going, it's a real problem for them offensively, because everything is kind of anchored around what those two are capable of. And I think that in the first 10 and a half minutes of the fourth quarter tonight against Dallas, who did a good job just staying in front, not letting them get to the rim often, forcing them into being a jump shooting team, which is ultimately what a big piece of this is for Phoenix. Like they are a jump shooting team that does not put a crazy amount of pressure on the rim. If you can force them into being like a mid-range jump shooting team and one of KD and Booker doesn't have it going, it's a real problem for them to actually create efficient offense. They desperately need Bradley Beal, I think, to be able to even like make a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I mean, this thing, whenever you put a big three together like this, you kind of need the big three, as good as, two of those guys are, as much as like, it looks, Okogie is a guy that's, back in the lineup now. He's a guy I like because of his offensive rebounding and just the little things that he does. Royce O'Neal, we've talked about him. Grayson Allen has had a great year. But like at the end of the day, you need your big three. And so like it's not going to work. Like they're not title contenders without Bradley Beal. With Bradley Beal, like it's a whole different conversation. It will be interesting to see how that offense looks, though. I guess my thing too is like those guys still need time on the floor together to gel. I know it's been more, but it just doesn't seem like it's been enough to really figure it out, especially offensively, because you don't want it to be just isolation, mid-range pull-up jumpers. You would like to see some flow of drive and kick, attack a closeout, get some easy looks for each other by playing off of each other's talent.
Yeah, so they've played 440 minutes together. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. They have a 128.3 offensive rating, a 116.3 defensive rating. They've been incredible when they've played, but you need the three. Like you can't just have two of them. Yeah. It becomes much more difficult if you only have two of them, unfortunately. So that was just my takeaway on this game tonight. Like I think Dallas looks every bit like an awesome team that's going to be a really tough out in the playoffs. And I think that Phoenix just desperately needs Bradley Beal. Like there's almost not a point in evaluating them without him, kind of. Even Grayson Allen's had a phenomenal year. He's had an incredible season. He's shooting he's shooting like almost like a 190 season, forget a 180 season right now. And it's still really hard for Phoenix to generate offense in those moments without the three of them. So Phoenix needs to get healthy, and we'll see what they look like.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Next up, let's talk about this Doc Rivers thing.
Oh.
So, well, actually, real quick. No. Let's talk about this Kevin Durant thing that happened in the first part of this game. So, Kevin Durant, and shout out to who's my guy? Jonah Javad, who I guess is like a TV sportscaster in the Phoenix area. So Kevin Durant's running out onto the court, and this woman calls him a bitch, and he turns around and he's like, yo, what's going on here? Like, guys, stop being dickheads to NBA players. Just because you buy a ticket, it does not give you the right to say whatever the fuck you want. It just does not give you the right to say whatever in the world you think is something that you would not say to anybody just randomly on the street. That woman would not say that to Kevin Durant on the street. She just absolutely would not. Treat these people like human beings. Treat these people like normal, like people, like they are. They're just good at basketball. I get that they make a lot of money, but just because they make a lot of money, it does not give you the right to say, yeah, Kevin Durant, like just gonna call you a bitch, like right when you walk out on the court. What are we doing here? Like,
Yeah.
what in the world are we doing here?
Yeah, I've never understood this, and like I've obviously been a fan. I go to games, I watch. Like I'm a irrational Kansas City Chiefs fan, as I've told you, Sam. I've been to multiple games at Arrowhead. I've never felt the need to yell anything. You know what I mean? Like it's weird to me. I will celebrate and I'll act like a little kid when something crazy happens or whatever. I've just never really felt. I've never understood. I will tell you this. I was telling someone the other day. When I was a coach, the only time I truly got upset is when crowds would yell directly at me or my players. And I mean, I would do what KD did. I would be in games coaching and I would look up into the crowd, like even my own crowd, people in my own crowd, and I would tell them to be quiet. Or I could not stand, and this was high school, people yelling at my players. You want to yell at the officials, you want to cheer as loud and say whatever you want for your team, that's fine. Don't yell at my players or me or whatever. I don't know if it's fans trying to want to feel more a part of the game or what it is. I also want to know what explanation this guy was trying to give. Like KD stood there and listened to him for a little bit. So I don't know if that means it was compelling or what, but the guy acts like he's trying to justify it in some way. And so I would love to know what the justification he was trying to give. The last thing I'll say is I also am like, I does KD not hear this every time? Like, I guess I was a little surprised that it caught his attention enough to get him to turn around. Did that surprise you? Or do you think this was more of an outlier?
It didn't surprise me just because it looked kind of quiet in the arena. This is clearly
Okay.
like, a good amount of time before the game.
Yeah.
Nobody is in these seats yet. I mean, like, there's just like two people there. It has to be like very obvious, like where it came from. Yeah, like I'm not super surprised. I don't mind him turning around. I think it's reasonable.
No. To be clear, I'm not questioning that he did it. I'm just saying, I guess my impression would be that these guys hear this stuff all the time. So I guess I kind of would just assume that they are learned to drown it out. I have no problem with KD questioning it. I'm just saying I'm almost surprised that he even heard it. Like almost they've just conditioned themselves not to hear the crowd, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. The guy, to be clear, I think that the exact term was, "Oh, I have a podcast about sports." And that's where Kevin Durant turns around and goes like eye roll and just like moves away. For what it's worth, like the security people came over and like, we're ready to throw these people out. And Kevin Durant, I guess, according to the TV reporter that reported this, Jonah Javad, like said, like, don't throw them out. Like it's whatever. Which is nice, like, good for him. But this man is the face of sports podcasting now for the next 24 hours. And it's a shame. It's a shame for all of us here.
Yeah. I hate to be a guy that like tells people how to fan. Like to me, go cheer on your team, have fun with your crowd, whatever. I don't mind.
No. I'm going to tell people how to fan.
Okay.
Do not call NBA players a bitch when they're running out onto the court.
Yeah.
I feel quite good about telling people not to do that.
Yeah. I mean, like you said it perfectly. If you wouldn't say it as somebody walking down the street, why do you think you can say it to them whenever they're playing a game? And again, you want to boo people. You want like, I think the Giannis count when he's at the free throw line is hilarious. Like this is from someone who I loved playing on the road. I loved student sections. Like they would do creative stuff to me, Sam. They would chant my girlfriend's phone number, which is now my wife. They would chant her phone number at me when I was shooting free throws in high school and like chant her name.
Crazy.
It was actually really funny. They would chant her name anytime I had the ball, like stuff like that. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. Like that's all in good fun. But like there's a very easy line to figure out of part of the sport, fun, whatever, and just crossing a line and calling somebody that is absolutely crossing the line and ridiculous. Like it just serves no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah, and I thought Kevin Durant handled this well. He went over, he said his piece. didn't look to get upset with it. I mean, like he clearly was like frustrated with it or whatever, but like, kept a level head and just simply moved on with his day, and then like didn't have them thrown out according to that reporter. So yeah, like I think Kevin Durant handled himself well here, and I think these people like frankly should have been thrown out, even though Kevin told them not to be thrown out.
Yeah.
Regardless, don't do this. Don't be these people. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Doc Rivers.
Okay.
JJ Redick went on to, so there are like 95 different pieces of this that are going to wheel out, right? JJ Redick went on TV. I think he was on First Take and talked about how Doc Rivers, there is zero accountability with this guy ever, I believe was JJ's line after some of the comments that he made over All-Star break. I don't even know if they played the comments. I can't remember if they did or not. Doc has been in the media saying just all sorts of crazy things because of course he is. Doc, I know, said like that when the Bucks ownership approached him, he said, you shouldn't be doing this. And then they said, well, it's done. So what can we do now? You're our guy. He said something, he's been like complaining about like how it's hard to come in mid-season as a coach, all this shit. Like, we'll talk about that once we get done with all of this, explaining the whole thing. Patrick Beverley stepped in. Patrick Beverley basically stood up for the man who is now his coach, said something along the lines of, let's see if we can find
something about resurrecting JJ's career or giving a second chance.
This man, Doc, actually saved your career. Started when no one else wanted you, and you retire, go on TV and say that. JJ came back at Pat and said, Pat, I had a 4-year offer with a player option for the same money to be a starter on a different team. Fuck out of here. Save my career. Great response, JJ Redick. What Patrick Beverley there, I think, was sort of referring to is that like he thought that JJ's career was in need of saving whenever he originally signed with the Clippers, but like when he signed with the Clippers, he'd been coming off of a season where he was like in the 6th man of the year race, like briefly, and was averaging 14 points, shooting, 37% from 3, 43% from the field. Like he had a solid season the year before, averaged 4 assists. I think he actually, had a career high in assists that year, it looks like. So he goes to the Clippers. That's, the offer that JJ is referring to has actually been like very public. It was a Timberwolves offer where, again, it was the same money, and he just decided that he liked the Clippers opportunity better. Reasonable enough. JJ played with the Clippers, for 3 or 4 years, if I remember correctly. I think he went out the whole time in that deal. Then got the crazy money from Philadelphia. He made, what was it? It was like
it was a 1-year deal, right? Like they just brought him in, overpaid him quote unquote, overpaid him for a year. And then,
give him the $23 million balloon payment for a year. Yep. And then he came back at 12.25 the next year. Yep. And then I think that full deal, it might've been like a 3-year, like $38 million deal or something like that. No. Maybe he signed a 2-year deal with the Pelicans after that. I think it was like a 2-year, $26 million deal with the Pelicans after the first Philly year. But the Beverly piece of it, like, just makes no sense. I totally get Patrick Beverly, like, sticking up for his coach. Beverly's the guy in, Milwaukee that has the podcast and is in the public space. Totally cool. Whatever. You want to stand up for your guy. I'm not going to, fight you on it necessarily. Here's the thing. JJ Redick is like ostensibly right here. Like he just is. Doc Rivers does this shit all the time where like he tries to come up with excuses for all of the shit that has happened in his career, including losing 3-1 series leads, which is like almost unconscionably bad and like unfathomable to me. Like it's not an accident at that point. Once you get to 3, it's not just luck that the team came back once against you 3-1. Like you've done this 3 times now, and it's never his fault. It just truly is like never his fault. in a way that is enormously frustrating, incredibly annoying. And like, he needs to understand that that is his perception. Now, like, it's only his perception, I think, for people who watch the NBA closely, maybe. For like the wide audience, I can see a world where like, yeah, like he's lost 3-1 3 times, whatever. But like, they see the guy who like goes on Simmons's podcast and was on TV and is like generally like a gregarious guy and everything. He's talked to the media for years upon years upon years. Like, he's not a bad dude or anything. It's just, you do got to take the accountability at some point. Like, it is kind of on you at a certain point that you lose these situations.
Well, and like, I just don't like that he's building in excuses ahead of time. I think that's what struck me as weird.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's get to the end of the season. And if you come up short, then give me the legitimate reasons why. Like, to tell me what it is then. But it was like, this is really hard. And, I told him not to do it. And this is, coming in during the middle of the season. I think he said, this was from Eric Nim. I've never done this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. It's going to be a challenge. Like, and listen, I usually try to side with coaches. I'm not saying it's easy, but you do have Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard on your team, not to mention Brooke Lopez, Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis. Like, you're not coaching the Detroit Pistons or the Washington Wizards or the Charlotte Hornets, with all due respect to those teams. Like, I realize there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. My other thing is, say no. Like, you didn't have to take the job. If it was going to be that hard, you didn't want the pressure, or you didn't think you could be successful, then don't do it. Like, by all accounts, he was successful in doing what he was doing. So I think that's my only problem. Like, I'm fine when people are transparent. So I sometimes I don't like to judge too harshly, because we can't say, tell us the truth, stop giving us the politically correct answer, and then get upset every time people do. But I don't necessarily love this. Like, it's just like, hey, let me build all this stuff in just in case we don't do what we're supposed to do. And that just rubbed me a little bit the wrong way.
No, 100%. Like, Doc Rivers has made an insane amount of money as a basketball coach at this point. Like, look, it's hard to turn down whatever the hell they had to give him to get him to do this, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I'd be willing to turn down, probably pretty close to $10 million a year. Like, I'd imagine that, per year, it's probably right around that number. That's a total speculative thing for me. But like, given what he's made at previous stops, it's probably in that ballpark. You don't need the money, man. Like, if you feel like this is hard and like, I wouldn't wish this on anybody and the Bucks shouldn't do this and this, that, and the other thing, like, you just don't got to do it then. Like, that's the reality. Like, I get that it's a good opportunity. I get that you went to Marquette and like, it's a great opportunity to like, to go back home basically. And you get to coach Giannis and Dame and all this stuff, but like, you don't have to take every opportunity that comes your way. You just don't. And I get it. Like, it's a lot of money and it's fine, but if you want to take the money, cool. Don't like bitch about it publicly for, all this time and be like, this is so hard and this, that, and the other. It's totally absurd to me.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, and I didn't understand that side of it. I don't know. Maybe my head's I would like to think there was something be exciting, invigorating about getting to go to Milwaukee and coaching one of the best players in our game and another one of our best players in our game, and, trying to make that work. And so, and it's not like, again, there is a lot of pressure with it. I understand it. But yeah, like, this is one of those times where I do understand people who get frustrated with this. And my other thing is, it's not like JJ Redick came out of left field. Like, JJ Redick talks about this stuff every day. It's his job to talk about these things. And it wasn't some just random person who's like, hey, I'm going to take a shot at Doc. Like, JJ probably wasn't even trying to take a shot at Doc. He was just literally talking about it the same way we are. These quotes come out, the topic comes up, you give your opinion. And I thought it's a fair opinion. If you don't share the opinion, that's fine. Like, if you think Doc is really in this situation, by all means. In my opinion, I don't love these quotes coming out before like things have even really got going.
Yeah. I agree. You grabbed this fun table from Mike Prada over
This
at
is
The Athletic
this is
recently.
crazy. This is crazy, Sam.
This like completely blew my mind. Maybe I'll just like put this up on the screen while we're doing this because it just is so mind blowing. Doc Rivers' record in 3-1 like series is
Well,
like,
this is
so,
anytime he has 3 wins. So technically it's like he could have been up 3-0 and then lost 1 or 2 or something like that. But
so for the people listening on the podcast feed, these are current NBA coaches and their playoff record with 3 wins in a series. Darvin Ham is 2-2. George Karl is 13-13. So it's not even current, I guess. It's like a mix of things, I guess. Steve Kerr, 23-11. Mike Malone, 6-4. Joe Mazzulla, 2-1. Greg Popovich, 33-14. Eric Spoelstra, 21-11. Doc Rivers, 16-33 in playoff series when his team has 3 wins. That is by far, by about 18%, the worst winning percentage among any of those coaches. That like boggles my mind.
yeah, and
Completely blows my mind.
As we look at it, I don't know, like, and again, shout out Mike. I don't know why he chose the coaches he did. But I don't know other coaches that may have worse records, whatever. But like the thing that struck me, Sam, was he could potentially have to go through 3 of these guys to get to an NBA Finals this year. You know, like he could meet Eric Spoelstra and the Heat. He could meet Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics, and then he could have to meet Mike Malone in the NBA Finals if he were to take the Bucks, through this. So the guys on this list that have pretty impressive records, which you would think you would as a coach when you have, 3 wins in a series, he would have to go through all of those guys potentially through the path to an NBA championship with this team, which at the end of the day is kind of what that's what this Bucks team is built. It's not to win the first round or something. It's to go all the way to the finals. And it's just like, at the end of the day, there's a lot of stats that just aren't great whenever he's in those situations.
So all told, let's do a recap here. JJ Redick, completely in the right. I have no problem with him doing this. I think this is completely fair, completely reasonable. Makes total sense to me. I have no issue with him saying what he said because I frankly find it accurate. Agreed?
Agreed.
Patrick Beverley, don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's defending his guy.
Yep.
Totally cool.
Agreed.
They then made Austin Rivers go on TV and like talk about this. ESPN, like, maybe don't do that, but like Austin Rivers defending his dad, totally cool.
Makes
completely
sense.
reasonable. Doc Rivers, stop complaining about the fact that you got a head coaching job. That's the reality of where this lies, right?
All on board with that.
All on board. Okay. We're to the fun part of the show now, Bryce. We're to the part that I think you care most about.
No, listen, I will tell you, I just wish I would have seen all of that game. With all due respect to my students and the parents and all that, I wish I could have been watching the Suns Mavs game so I could have talked more in depthly about that. This Doc Rivers thing as a coach, it struck me like it did. But yes, you're right. This is the fun part.
We're now taking NBA draft questions. We will take some from the comments. We have a group of questions that have been asked from a Twitter post that I put up earlier this week. I guess it would have been something like that. Maybe, honestly, could have been like 24 hours ago. Yeah. So we're going to take those questions and I'm going to tweet out a link that we're doing this now. And Bryce, where do you want to start? I'll kind of give you the floor on what you think is an interesting place.
Let's just start with this first one, and then we can jump around from there because this keeps us a little bit more general NBA stuff. And I'm fascinated to kind of see where you're at with this because I didn't come up with a very good answer.
Okay. The question is from Ryan LaPrade. Who is the best player you could trade the number 1 pick in the 2024 NBA draft for? I find this like utterly fascinating, like across the board to me. I love everything about this question. I've been trying to think about this for like the last 24 hours. I think I have my answer and it's like very specific, but I would love to hear yours before we go.
I don't have an answer. Like I just came up with names and I wanted to see how quickly you would tell me no. And I think the best thing I came up with is could these guys be the start, like the 85% of a trade? And then could the number one pick be 85% of the return for any of these guys? But like, I don't think I would trade. I think where I got to is I don't think I would trade any of these guys. And then I got to a point of guys where I'm like, well, I probably wouldn't trade the number one pick for these guys. Like I would rather just go ahead and take my pick with Alex Sarr or Risa Shea or Cody Williams or whoever it is and just take my chance. Now there's always some team context in that. Or would you even come close to trading any of the names I put on the list on the doc?
Yes, there is one specific name here that I quite like, that I find interesting. So you brought up Jared Allen.
I would say that's probably a no, but
no for who?
I don't think the Cavs would trade Jared Allen, right?
Let's say that they lose in the first round or something like that.
Okay, that's
and
true.
We're in the situation where Donovan Mitchell is like leaving or something.
We're post playoffs. Yep.
They like make the second round, but they find that like the Jared Allen, Evan Mobley fit isn't really working. Okay. And Memphis gets the number one overall pick after having just traded Steven Adams to Houston.
Okay. That's interesting.
If you're Memphis, would you do the number one overall pick for Jared Allen, knowing that that is like a perfect fit next to Jaren Jackson, a perfect fit next to Ja Morant, the interior presence that they could kind of use, like that makes you a top 5 defense for sure. Probably, honestly, it probably makes them the number 1 defense in the league. You have Jared Allen next to Jaren Jackson, and you have Marcus Smart. That's the kind of defensive infrastructure you need around Ja Morant.
I can get behind that a little bit.
But I think these situations are like very specific kind of.
Yeah.
If we're talking about it, right? Like it's a deal where you're trying to figure out, is there a situation that would move the pick as opposed to like the exact team? So like if you're Detroit, let's say, is there anybody you would move this pick for? Like, would you move this pick for Brandon Ingram?
So that's the one,
the core piece.
So that's the one I brought up. Like that's the one that but I don't think that gets there. So like my process was, could this plus whatever else you need get you to Brandon Ingram? Now, like, I mean, the thing is, like, are the Pistons even close enough to be really making that move? I don't know. But I mean, at some point you got to try something or you got to start all over. So do you bring in somebody talented like that would fit in on the wing? Like maybe, but I don't think the Pelicans are trading Ingram just for the number 1 pick.
I think it's a great question. Like, could you do, if you're the Pelicans and you really liked, Alex Sarr as a fit next to Zion Williamson, right? Like, do you think that getting 4 cost-controlled years of Alex Sarr is better than 1 year remaining of Brandon Ingram, who is extension eligible this summer? But like, if you're them, like, how great do you feel about giving him an extension, next to Zion? How do you feel about Zion Williamson being the guy that you build around? Do you try to move Zion instead of Brandon? Like, there's, a number of different factors here that I think are eminently fascinating. I think Ingram is an interesting name.
And going back to Allen real quick, somebody brought up Dirty Dancer. Jared Allen's on a really good contract right now. He also only has 2 years left on that contract. So you get him at $20 million for 2 more years, and then you're going to have to pay up, where the number 1 pick, yes, is a substantial amount, but it's cost controlled, for longer than that at a smaller number.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to look at teams that are like closing in on the second apron, kind of. Is there a chance that Jaylen Brown, if Boston was to like lose early in the playoffs, like they were to lose in the second round or something, and that extension kicks in and they think that they need to make like some sort of shakeup?
So that's so interesting, right? Because as a player, it's a no-brainer. But again, just use the Pistons. Whoever, you can be whatever team. Like, do you want to take on that contract with where you're at? Is that worth it? How far can you get now? Like, I think it comes down to how much you believe in your young. Like, if you're the Spurs, do you do that? Do you go pair him with Victor Wembanyama and think that you can really fast track this thing? So I think that's where it becomes really interesting, because now all of a sudden you have $60 million on your book. So the player for player trade is like you absolutely do it, but that contract is such a huge factor. Like somebody brought up Cat way earlier, and it's like Cat's market, if it ends up coming to that, is going to be fascinating because of what his contract is. Like that's so much money. And so you got to find the right team to have that has the money, but is also ready to contend and compete. And does that type of team, a team that's not there yet, do they want to have that type of money on their books?
Yeah. I think it would cost more than the number one pick in this draft to get Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Still, I do. I think that Boston would ask for more. Like if it was Washington, but here's the thing, you have to salary match too, right? Like unless you have cap space, you have to salary match.
So that's where the Pistons,
you're going to get other things back too. The Pistons could just literally do number one.
Yep.
But I think that Boston would want more than that.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Jaylen Brown.
I just wonder, like, how valuable is that to Boston? Then, do you want the salary match back? Do you not? We actually talked with Keith Smith about this recently, just, kind of the pros and cons of matching that salary or not. If the Pistons do, like, that's my thing, I guess. If the Pistons are going to make a big swing anyway this summer, a team like that, then, if they could go get somebody for the number one pick, it makes sense to me. Like if they're going to go do it, I'd rather them get a real player, right? Like a Jaylen Brown, a Brandon Ingram, and not just like waste money in free agency. I would rather them use the number one pick because as we've talked about, it may not be like a face of the franchise type player. I'd rather them use that and get a real dude, like a dude that can really play. I would rather them do that than take a chance on somebody in free agency, overpay, and maybe that guy's really good, but maybe that guy's not.
Okay, next question. My answer to this is like very team specific. It'd be like if Memphis got number one, like maybe you could see like a Jared Allen move. And if you're Cleveland, like if you're going to keep Donovan Mitchell, it means you're going to keep him at a larger number. You're going to be coming into Evan Mobley being, very, very expensive after his extension. Maybe you do want like a cost controlled kind of player, like a, Zach Rizzachet who can play on the wing and can be like a shot maker next to your Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell backcourt with Evan Mobley, right? Like something like that. I think is interesting.
That's why I've actually put Garland in there for what if the Spurs wanted to trade the number one pick and bring in Garland to be that backcourt guy. And then if you're the Cavs, maybe you still believe in Mobley and Allen, but you're turning the backcourt over to Mitchell. You trade Garland to the Spurs, and then you draft Rizzachet to play on the wing. And I thought maybe that was one that would make sense for both teams.
I actually kind of dig that one too. That's interesting.
That was actually probably my favorite one where I like worked out the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, is Trae Young an answer here?
Okay. So I didn't put him in there. I don't think it gets it done just the pick, but again, can it get you to 75, 80% of what you would need to send out?
Yeah. I think it would be more like, I think it would cost more than number one in this draft to get Trae Young. But like if we're including just like moving the pick for a player, like Trae Young's an interesting one. Especially if San Antonio was to get number
the Spurs,
one.
right? Like just right back to it.
Fantastic idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up from John over on Twitter. What position group actually deserves the most time and patience with evals in the league? I feel like we hear every variation of Guards take the longest time, bigs take the longest time, wings take the longest time to develop. But generally, who actually takes the longest to pan out before being able to come to a reasonable consensus? I have a very clear answer here, but I would be interested to hear yours.
Yeah, I'm still going to go with primary initiators. I just think
Yes. That's the right answer.
Yeah, the load offensively first of getting everybody in the right spots, navigating ball screens, understanding the coverages that are coming at you. And then if you're really good at it, then they just start blitzing you and trapping you, and you have to make plays out of that. But then I also said on top of that, Sam, because this is such a league of ball screen and even isolation to extent, then you have to learn how to navigate ball screens on the other end. Like, you can't be a guy that just dies on every screen and gets crushed in every pick and roll situation. So it's truly an area, like a position where you have to be able to do both, operate and defend the ball screen to start, and then everything else that goes along with it. So I thought it was primary initiator pretty easily.
I think it is too. I don't even really think it's a question in my mind. Like, wings can come in, and if you're good on defense, like, you can probably play like a reasonable level. Herb Jones was able to come in and play at a reasonable level, right? Like, I think like Steph Castle like has a chance to come in, even though he's a struggling shooter. Like, he's pretty good on defense. Like, you might be able to play him like a reasonable amount, and him like not destroying you in terms of your lineup impacts, right? If you have a like lead guard that is young, Scoot Henderson, De'Aaron Fox, Darius Garland, like, you can go back through history. It's hard. Like, it's really, really hard because those guys have the ball in their hands all the time.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to make that work.
I kind of went the other way too. I was like, what is the easiest? Like, what archetype of player? I said the rim running
big.
Yeah, that's what I said too. Like, and I mean, the name that came to mind was Derek Lively. And again, I feel like this isn't to diminish him. This is a real talent and skill, but like the pressure to do things and isn't quite as big. The one I really found fascinating was like the floor spacer, because it's a really quote unquote easy rule, but it comes with a lot of pressure, because if you don't make shots, like, your role is making shots, and if you're not, then you're not doing anything. So it's an easy role in the sense of it's not super complicated, but there's a lot of pressure that you better do it really, really well and at a high clip early on.
I think that I would like phrase it slightly differently. I would say elite tools rim running big is probably the easiest way to go in, but like, you really need like the tools at the end of the day.
Sure.
I might go like athletic, wing type, like athletic wing shooter. Like, it's not easy to translate to the NBA anytime, but I do think that like we've seen guys like Sadiq Bey, Desmond Bain, even like Chris Duarte was pretty good as a rookie. Franz Wagner was good as a rookie. Like, Herb Jones couldn't really shoot it, but like Herb was able to come in and play like at a solid clip. Like, I think that might be like wing sort of role. Okay. This one from the YouTube chat. Shout out to Darren Flowers for the super chat.
Big time, man.
Would it be a mistake for the Spurs to draft Alex Sarr? I don't think Jeremy is good. And do you think Wesley still has a chance to be something? Blake Wesley's like been okay recently, I guess, as like a backup point guard. I'll kind of answer that. I'm not like, I've never been wildly high on Blake Wesley. I've liked the fact that he's been able to get to the paint a little bit easier. I've liked the fact that he has been able to finish like semi-efficiently. The shot just looks so broken right now, I feel like.
Yeah, I remember going back to preseason games. I think of watching the Spurs and like, man, Blake Wesley's like got a little bit of something going here. He's really pressuring the rim, and the speed and all of that's really showing out. Like, yeah, like I guess if chance to be something, like you said, is maybe a backup point guard who just really pressures the rim, and maybe he figures out a way, like defensively, like he just really gets after it and brings energy and all those things. Like, there's a way to be useful in that role. I don't think it ends up being a high-end outcome, but maybe, like, I wouldn't completely sell every cent of my Blake Wesley stock, but I'm not like, super excited about it. mistake drafting Sarr. Like, I think there may be better options there, but I would be super intrigued to see it. Like, I would have a blast watching him and Victor Wembanyama and what they would do defensively to teams. Like, good luck trying to score on those two guys. And I mean, I guess I believe in both of their offensive skill sets enough to like, hey, I'll try it out and let's roll with it and see what happens.
I probably wouldn't have Sarr near the top of my board if I was them. Like, I would have Riza Shea ahead. Think I would have Topic ahead.
Sure.
It'd be interesting to like consider like Cody Williams ahead of him, to consider, Matas and Steph Castle and those guys. Like, I'd have to like really kind of think about that a little bit more. But like Sarr, I don't know if it'd be a mistake to draft Sarr. I just don't know that he would be my immediate, fit there, but by any stretch. Sohan, I will say, I think his numbers, like in terms of efficiency and stuff, are like really dragged down this year by like the point guard stint. If you look at his last 28 games, he's played like 30 minutes a night. He's averaging 12 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists versus only 1.7 turnovers, shooting 46, 33, 80 over that time. Plus, he's like a pretty good defender. I still think 20-year-old Jeremy Sohan is going to be quite good in the NBA is where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's finally playing the position he needs to be playing. Again, like I would love to like know the thought process of what they were doing with, like, maybe they're just trying to figure it out. Maybe they were trying to prove to him like, hey, this isn't what you are. Maybe they were trying to prove to themselves, that it's not what he was. I don't know. Whatever. It didn't work. They're past it. They've moved on. And like you said, he's played much better since whenever they put a real point guard in the lineup and let him play where he needs to be playing.
From Cetum over on Twitter. Which teams currently projected to end up in the lottery do you think will be open to moving their picks? In which direction and why? There are a few like very easy teams to point out here, I think. So number one to me, like Memphis stands out like very obviously. Like they, are in a spot where they probably should be considering this like a bit of a contention window, and they've just had like a nightmare season. They might decide to take the pick and take the young talent, or they very well, I think, will explore the trade market at the end of the day. Like that makes all the sense in the world. Oklahoma City is another team that I think will absolutely explore. They have potential to have multiple lottery picks here, even like consolidation picks, or maybe moves involving like Ousmane Dieng or somebody like that to maybe restart the rookie clock on some of these guys, right? Maybe there are like a lot of different options Oklahoma City, I think, is going to have to entertain in order to get the best out of their assets that they have. Anyone else that kind of like stands out to you?
No, the Thunder Houston was one, just in the sense of, you have a lot of young guys already, right? Green, Jabari, Şengün, Amin, Whitmore, Eason, like if you want to throw Jayshawn Tate in there or not, whatever. And then you're going to play Fred VanVleet, you're going to play Dylan Brooks, and I assume you're going to play Steven Adams, Sam. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that's 9 guys already. And so I'm just like, like I wonder if they would be willing to trade out of what is considered a weak draft, and maybe they can pick up future assets. Maybe it's a vet, something like I'm not saying they would. I haven't even hashed out if I would agree with it. They struck me as a team that there's a lot of really young talent already. Would it be okay to take a year off from adding another young talent to that mix?
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. I think Houston could make some sense. I mean, Detroit, like speaking of like adding more young talent, like that kind of, they tick that box. I mean, I'm trying to think of any others like those ones feel like the main ones. Maybe New Orleans, if they decide they need to do a shakeup and they decide to take the Lakers pick this year, if the Lakers end up in the lottery, those are the ones that like stand out. Like Memphis and Oklahoma City and Houston to me were like the 3 that really kind of ticked the box.
Yeah, no, I agree. I put the Hawks just because I'm not sure what they would do. Like their offseason is going to be so interesting. So it would just, I have no idea where their path is going to go.
From Charles Christie, this is kind of a way to bounce off of that question. If the Thunder get 2 back-end lottery picks, let's say number 11 and 12, so the Thunder, if I remember correctly, have access to Houston's pick this year. And then if the Jazz fall outside of the top 10, they have access to the Jazz's pick this year. So 11 and 12, sure. What does consolidating them get you in draft return? Additionally, what high lottery teams would be interesting trade partners with them? Consolidating them is an interesting question. If it's a team like to me, Charlotte would be like interesting to try and like move down and just get more talent potentially. Washington, like if Washington was to fall like to number 5 or something, I wonder if you could partner 11 and 12 and jump to 5, like because Washington just needs like interesting young talents at the end of the day. They need quantity just as much as they need quality, which is like crazy to say draft time, but like I think the range for 11 and 12 is probably like 5-ish, something like that, depending on who gets the picks. Bryce, I can't hear you.
Rookie mistake. My immediate thought was 5. I think a lot of this is going to come down to also where the tier breaks happen, right? Like eventually there are going to be tiers of, these 3 guys are the top 3, even if they're not like true tier 1 players, but they're going to separate themselves a little bit. And so the team that ends up 4th, if that's what it is going to be a little bit more willing to potentially make a move. And for the Thunder, it may be a thing of, okay, we have 10 and 11. We think Matas is going to go at 7. So let's trade up to 5 and we're going to draft him at 5 and jump whoever was going to take him at 7. If you think Matas is the perfect fit or whoever it is, right? And so that's the position they're in. That's the luxury they have, is they can pinpoint their guy and they can essentially overdraft him, because it really doesn't matter if they overpay or whatever. If Matas is their guy, they go to where they think they need to get to him, and then they go get him and jump over whoever. And so that's a really good place for them to be in. I think that would be the scenario. And then you outline some teams who maybe fall. Maybe they say, hey, in this draft that's quote unquote weak, let's take 2 swings at this, and doing it at 10 and 11 is just as good as taking 1 swing at 5.
So, and this can be like a final addendum here to this like set of questions, I guess, from Josh Freaks in the Twitter segment of the questions. Could this draft see more trades than normal, considering the high talent pool of impact players is pretty shallow? My answer to that is that I think we've kind of already seen that answer is yes, right? Like you look through this draft, I mean, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 picks have already been moved, in addition to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6 other picks that are currently like protected in some way, like based on the draft order right now. So I think we've seen that like the picks are going to be more movable. Do you think that they could be more movable on draft night though, like in the week of the draft, Bryce?
I was leaning towards no, but what I've thought and wondered about is you're going to find out the teams who really trust their draft scouts and their process and stuff like that, right? You're going to see some teams that just trade out of the 2024 draft and say, we're good. And then I have a feeling, just talking to the people that I do know, I think we're going to see some really interesting names. And I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some guys that teams have in their top 20 that we have way later, and they're not going to care. This is who we're going to take. And so I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see who really trusts their evaluations, and teams are just going to say, screw it. And we're going to go for it. So I think that'll be, and my point was then, if you really trust your evaluators, maybe you are willing to make the trade that you need to, or maybe you're willing to trade back, right? Because we really think this is our guy and nobody else is seeing it. So we can trade back to 22 and get our guy there, that type of stuff. So maybe it ends up people buy into it, believe in their scouting, and that allows them to move around the board and get their guy where they want to.
Okay. Let's get into picks about, or questions about prospects now.
Okay.
From DB over on Twitter, among hundreds of other people who asked this question, it felt like.
Yeah.
How high can Johnny Furphy go in this draft? Every time I've watched a Kansas basketball game, not only has he looked better each time, but he's the highest energy player on the court. We had a similar question in the YouTube comments as well. Let's see if we can find that somewhere. Regardless, Johnny Furphy takes what Aussie oriented question. How high can Furphy go and who would he fit with? Where is Tyrese Proctor these days? We'll get to the first part of that now. I think Furphy can easily go in the top 10 is where I'm at. Like, if he just continues along the trajectory he's on, I had him at 13 on the mock. I would have him probably right around 10 or 11 on my board personally right now. Like, he could very easily go in the top 10. I think.
Yeah, I mean, the question said top 10 and I just said yes in all caps. Haha. Like, yeah, I mean, that's really where we're at. I mean, I think what everybody's doing is searching for wings, floor spacers, two-way players. Like, I know we don't need to get like deep dive into the Johnny Furphy scouting report. I feel like we've done that. But, you know, since he started playing actual minutes, Sam, 35 minutes a game over the last 10, almost 14 points on 56, 43, 76, 7 rebounds, 1.5 steal or assists, 1.2 steals, half a turnover a game. Even in his last 4, he's dipped a little bit, and those numbers still are that good. So I think we talked about this. We're going to learn more about him over the next month, as the Big 12 is just a gauntlet, and you're going to get a lot of good competition. But right now he really looks the part to me, and he looks young. And so I think there's a real belief that, hey, as he really fills out and grows up and matures, it's going to get even better. And I tend to buy that the defense is really going to continue to grow, because as you said from the very first time we ever talked about him, he wants to be good defensively. It's just not quite there yet.
Totally right. I haven't seen much from him that makes me, I mean, I have, like, he's very high-waisted, and his fundamentals on defense just are like very bad. It's kind of the easiest way to say it right now. But he's athletic. He clearly plays hard. He plays with a ton of energy. He's 6'9". He's a real athlete. Like, those tools tend to allow people to figure things out defensively, or at least have like real margin for error. As long as the offense is there, as long as he continues to get out in transition and continues to, you know, put up like 14 points and 7 rebounds over his last 10 games, like, you know, he knocks down spot up threes, he cuts, you know, he obviously runs the court really well. Like, you can be a bit more limited when you're 6'9", you're a real athlete, you can shoot. Like, those things give you such a high baseline, I think, that, yeah, I mean, the upside is top 10, I think, for sure.
Almost 2 offensive rebounds a game in these 10 games since he started playing real minutes. 1.7. So I shouldn't say, like, it's not like it's 1.9, but like a real offensive rebounder. And that's what I look for in these like true off the ball player types. Like, people are really going to question, like, he can't put it on the deck and these type of things. Well, you don't need every player to do that. Like, a true off the ball wing can space the floor, knock down shots. And then if he's a good cutter, good offensive rebounder, gets out in transition, all of those things, that's a real player, especially if the defensive stuff comes as well.
From Brandon McIntyre over on Twitter, who are the candidates to go in the top 3 that aren't in the consensus top 3 right now?
So I put Dillingham. I realize some people have him in the top 10, but I think between you and I, we wouldn't have him as a top 10, right? So is Dillingham cheating? He'd be right there as on the top 10 for me. Dillingham's probably cheating.
I wouldn't have Dillingham as like a consensus top 10 guy right now. I guess that's probably the answer if some team thinks he's Trae Young, but like, he's just like nowhere near the passer that Trae is what makes it complicated. And I'm not joking, Bryce. I think Dillingham is worse on defense than Trae was at Oklahoma. Like, that play last night where he gave up after he goes down, drills the mid-range jumper, step back to his right to give Kentucky the lead with like 13 seconds left. He just like totally space cadets out and decides to not pay attention as Tyrell Ward just like lifts and then crashes and goes for the offensive glass, and he gets this like easy putback. Dillingham, like for what it's worth, like he said after the game, like he felt like it was a lot of his bad that he screwed that up, and he did. Like he knows it and he took account for it, and I respect that. But it's been a real problem all year for him. He is really bad at getting through screens. Like again, everyone is complaining at John Calipari for, oh my God, like Rob Dillingham is 5th on this team in minutes. That's crazy. It is true. Like I get that people don't watch defense closely, and like I get it that like it's not the easiest thing in the world. He is that bad on defense where it's hard to keep him on the court and like get winning plays. He is special on offense. Like I actually am at the point where like I think he is. I don't think he's like Trae Young level on offense, but he is special on offense. It just really is such a worry on defense. But the fact that he is as special on offense as a shot creator as he is, and as a scorer and as a pull-up player, I mean, I guess like maybe he's the answer here.
I don't want to give any of these answers. Like I feel like I'm kind of getting cooked a little bit in the comments. Like the question isn't exactly easy to ask for a guy outside the consensus top 10 that's going to be a top 3 pick. I didn't say Dillingham should be a top 3 pick. I'm just trying to answer like, okay, I have him outside the top 10. Do I think a team could fall in love with his offense and say, we don't care about the defense, or we'll figure out the defense or whatever? Like, and he was just the first name on my list. Collier was another name. I feel like right now, Isaiah Collier is outside the top 10 consensus, correct? Yeah. And I thought he was really good against Colorado. So I'm just like, okay, can he have a great into the season and people decide he's the best point guard in the class? Like, would it be crazy if one team talked them into him being better than Topic and any other guard? I wouldn't agree with it right now, but could I see it happening? Sure.
I think the other name is Tidjane Saloon.
I have that one as well. Yep.
I'm not quite as high, but he is 6'9". He's a real athlete and he can shoot. That is a good combination of skills to have for a team to fall in love with you. That's probably the one that like totally stands out to me. Like somebody mentioned Yves Missy in the comments. I've had a couple people bring up Yves Missy to me as like a potential, top, 7 or 8 pick. I just don't think a team's going to take like such a limited big in the top 3 at the end of the day. That's a little bit high for me on it. Okay. From Adi Joseph. Adi, you are a dear friend. 3 questions from Adi, who I very much enjoy. Which disappointing freshman could be the next Jalen Johnson in terms of like guy who goes number 20 because he had a bad freshman season and then ends up like drastically exceeding his draft range, by just being better and having a bad season that, didn't tell us the whole story of who he actually was as a player. Like, honestly, like Cam Whitmore is probably like kind of a guy like this as well.
Yeah. So I put Isaiah Collier here. This is actually another one for him where if, again, it doesn't go what I just talked about, where he continues to play well. And I don't know, maybe he ends up falling this far if that's how it was. Like you see him in some mocks falling this far. So Collier was a name. And then I don't think either of these guys are going to be in the first round, but Basketball Genesis just says it. I think they're both second round guys, but DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards both came to mind that could, like, I've had scouts tell me like Justin Edwards still has some 3-and-D wing potential, like as a, a real NBA player, not a first round pick anymore, not a lottery guy, nothing like that, but just as guys that could still get in, a guy that could still get in the NBA and have a career.
Yeah. I mean, just looking through like the top 10 recruits last year, it's like Ron Holland, Collier, Edwards, Cody Williams, Bradshaw, DJ Wagner, Matas, Jacoby Walter, Steph Castle, Mackenzie Mbako. I mean, Mbako is not going in the first round.
Correct. But has gotten better throughout the year.
Has gotten a little bit better throughout the year. I think the name is either Edwards or Collier. And I think like saying that Collier, like if Collier was to fall to like 16 or 17, I think that's probably the name that I would pick as well.
Yep.
Number 2, in the era of NIL and two-way deals, what is the correct calculus on stay or go? Like, if you make X number of dollars in NIL versus a two-way versus getting a guarantee, things like that. Like, how much money should you be looking for in order to stay in school? I think it's a lot more of an art in this case than like a calculus.
Yeah.
Like a guy like that's going to have this call this year is like Bub Carrington, probably, right?
Okay. Sure.
Like Bub Carrington to me should just go back to Pitt or transfer somewhere, but probably go back to Pitt and hope Pitt like brings in shooters at the end of the day in the transfer portal, because I'm sure they'll be able to take care of him. Like in order to keep him, I'm sure they'll be able to take care of him. And then his upside as a prospect is just like quite high. Like he could go in the first round next year quite easily if he improves as a shooter, improves as a finisher, becomes a little bit more pass first, given what his skill set is. Like I think that he can really pass and doesn't always do it. So like for him, the calculus to me is like, well, I actually have a chance to be a lottery pick next year. I'm probably just going back to Pitt regardless. If I'm a second round pick, if I can be a first round pick this year, great, cool. I get leaving, but if I'm going to be a second, then I should just go back. If I'm more of like a junior, like
that's where it gets interesting.
Let's say like Ryan Kalkbrenner, right? Who is a big, would at the very least be on a two-way next year. Like no questions asked, would be on a two-way next year. But would he get a guarantee? Maybe, like not impossible, but I think probably wouldn't if you made me bet right now. Creighton's been playing better though, and he's been a big piece of that, so not impossible. If I went in like assuming I was a two-way and I was a junior, the NIL difference would, like, I'd probably need to get, somewhere in the ballpark of like 5, I would think, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting with those is, especially like someone like Carrington, it makes sense. You can see how he can really improve his draft stock by going back. When you get to juniors and seniors and super seniors and stuff like that, is okay, they can go back. Maybe they make more money in 1 year, but how much can they actually improve their draft stock? Like I would love to see the study of especially older players who enter, upperclassmen who enter, return, and then how much, like, where does their draft stock go? Because Kevin McCullough is an interesting example because he goes back to Kansas. He's putting up crazy numbers right now, but he's still going to get discounted a little bit because it's his 6th year in college. He's 22 years old, all of those different things. And it's like, okay, is he really able to improve his draft stock? Like, I'm sure he's getting a boatload of NIL at Kansas, but
look, I'm not going to share numbers that I've heard for him because they're like, not, I don't know how real they are. Like I haven't confirmed them in any way, but like I've heard some pretty wild numbers on McCullough in terms of NIL.
And I could see that at Kansas, right? Like it makes sense. So it's like he's probably making more right now than, let's say, if he would have stayed in the draft and got a two-way or something, right? Like he could be making, but ultimately, what does it do for his long-term path and potential? And he's just an example, right? Like we could go down the list of different guys. And so I think the older guys is where it's interesting to me. Someone like Carrington just makes a ton of sense, right? Like that's what's nice about NIL is go back to school, make a boatload of money, and then, then enter the next year and improve your draft stock. So it's a real thing. But like NIL has changed the recruiting landscape as well, and the portal and all of that. Like it's a crazy game now with all of that stuff.
Question number 3 from Adi. Why did you drag Bryce over drafting Holland and Connect and then have them in almost identical spots in your athletic mock? Hey, the mock is where teams are. I can only do that. I can only do the mock where the intel leads me. And that's where Bryce was. And Bryce, you took Connect at like 8, and I said that the range was like 10 to 20 for Connect in the mock. You were aggressive on Dalton.
I was aggressive on Dalton. Dalton was also
You like-
getting buckets. I like guys that can get buckets.
Those are the important guys in the NBA. Kind of an add-on to this from YouTube user. Did Bobby Clinton make the right decision going to the NBL instead of sticking in the draft or staying in college? I don't look that one is such a difficult like counterfactual situation kind of thing where it's like I just don't know how his season would have gone at Wake or transferring or whatever.
And so you would know more than me, and maybe you don't know. But I think this stems for a lot of people from the report. I don't know if it was report. The idea out there that he had a first round guarantee.
Yeah, that was never accurate.
Okay, so that's I feel like
I'll like just full on say that was never accurate. He did not have a first round guarantee.
And so I wanted to dispel that. I didn't want to speak out of pocket. I feel like we had talked about it off air, and I didn't want to like just throw it out there. So like that's the thing as well. Like we don't know where Bobby Clinton would have got drafted last season. Like he had a really good end to his season last year. There was a lot of buzz. But like he may end up a first round pick still this year, which he wouldn't have been last year potentially.
The range I thought was like 25 to 40, 42, something like that. Who knows? Who knows what that leads to at the end of the day?
Can I ask a stupid question? Like this is
sure.
What are those guys making in the NBL, like the Clintmans, the SARs, those guys of the world?
Different numbers.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to share what I know and don't know because again, like kind of situation, like I've got numbers, but like I don't have them like confirmed necessarily. Gotcha. Sure. So like the Clinton first round promise thing, like that was not a thing. But that one I feel okay saying like I don't know that I really want to share that.
Sure.
Okay, next up, we'll save that one for near the end. I like this one. Who are the hardest players for you to evaluate this cycle? From Ryan.
Let me find. Where's my answer at? Where's that one at? See, here's the thing, guys. Sam's going out of order, so it's messing up my. There you go.
Absolutely warned you that this would be a factor.
It doesn't make it any easier to navigate it. So we've talked about the Ignite thing. I don't need to do that. Kentucky, because the Kentucky is hard to evaluate because I can't focus on one guy. I've talked to you about this, Sam. Like it drives me crazy because I want to watch Justin Edwards, but then Reed Shepherd catches my eye, and then Dillingham's over here, and then all of a sudden Avicic is in the game. I'm like, oh, I better watch this because I may only get 2 minutes to evaluate what this kid does. So that's just a nightmare. Hanson Yang is one. Chomsky is one that just because I can't get the film, I can't get my hands on the film. I've watched a little bit. So he's been one. Zach Edey, I went back into. I'm still trying to hash out what he is. So those are kind of the ones that are at the top of my list. In terms of Edey's not hard to evaluate. Edey, I'm still trying to hash out how I feel like
hard
it
to project.
Yes, like I'm still trying to decide what I believe in, what I don't, what translate, what doesn't, that type of stuff.
Yeah, look, my answer is probably Dillingham because I think the offense is so high level, like already, that he might be able to step in and like get buckets to the NBA like tomorrow. Like there's a real, like if you like the offense enough with Dillingham, there's like a case to take him at like 2 or 3. And like, I think it's reasonable to say that. The defense is so bad that like, it's really easy to buy into him just like struggling to become like a winning player in the NBA. Unless he really genuinely takes a leap on that end that is so above and beyond like what he is now. I would say trying to balance those 2 factors for Dillingham is the hardest thing that I'm struggling with in this class, maybe is the way to put it.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Like I said, I think a lot of it now is some of those guys at the top were just like literally getting the evaluations. And then it's some of those guys like Dillingham, whoever, like hashing out how it translates, how it projects, the offense versus the defense, those type of things.
While we're here, thoughts on Svanimir Ivicic from Mark Hammervald?
I don't know. Like,
I mean, I'll just say, like, I don't think I do not understand like anybody having him in the first round, like at any point this year. If anybody that's like watched the tape, from like the U19s and anybody that has seen him a decent amount, like there are real flashes where you buy first round upside, like 100%. And then when you watch the full games, like if you actually sit down and like you watch him play, it's like, no, this is like Kentucky can't have him on the court right now. Like he is not good enough defensively or as a screener to play on the court for Kentucky right now.
Yeah, like the offensive skill set's intriguing. I mean, I put this in the notes from the Vandy game. The movement defensively, the awareness against Vanderbilt. He had 3 fouls in 4 minutes, couldn't stay in front of anyone. And at times he just looked lost and like the game was moving too fast for him. And if the game's moving too fast for you at that level against Vanderbilt, how fast is the game going to be moving for you in the NBA? So I understand the intrigue. I understand the skill, all of that. He's nowhere near a first round guy for me. And yeah, like I would assume it. I would be surprised, I guess. I don't know. I shouldn't say be surprised. Like it wouldn't surprise me if he's not a 2024 guy though.
Yeah. Like he shouldn't be a 2024 guy.
Yeah.
Okay. From DB, who is a better defensive prospect in 5 years, Ryan Dunn or Asar Thompson?
Ryan Dunn.
I agree. I think it's Ryan Dunn. I think Ryan Dunn is unbelievable on defense. Like I think he is like steps into the NBA as like a top 30 defender in the league. Basically.
Ryan Dunn is a great mix of athleticism, explosion, solid defense with defensive playmaking and disruption, where I think Asar is a little bit of obviously a high level athlete, but his is a little bit more around just like like he does good things solidly on the ball. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit more of the disruption and playmaking. I thought it was Ryan Dunn for sure.
Dunn's like a 6'8" wing at Virginia who has immense struggles on offense. And the second part of this question is, who is a better offensive prospect in 5 years, Ryan Dunn or Asar Thompson?
Asar Thompson.
I don't even think that piece of it is close. I think Asar Thompson has much, much more upside as an offensive player.
Well,
than Ryan Dunn.
Asar went on a stretch where he shot the ball well. I mean, people threw it in my face all draft cycle about how Asar shot in the OTE playoffs or whatever. But I do think Asar can really pass. I think he can cut. Like, Ryan Dunn can cut an offensive rebound, but Asar's working with much more in terms of ball skills right now, if nothing else. And I think a better shooting profile, even though that's not a lot to say, than Ryan Dunn. So I love the questions. I love where his mind was at here. But I thought the answers actually came pretty easy for these two.
Okay. Speed roundish. Let's go with.
Okay, cool.
From Dirty Dancer, how high can Devin Carter go?
20?
I would even say like end of the lottery wouldn't like totally blow my mind. He's having an unbelievable season at Providence. 6'3" guard shooting, at a much higher percentage from three than he ever has before. How he shoots in pre-draft workouts, I think, is going to tell the tale of how high he goes. But I think Devin Carter's an NBA player. I've been a fan for a long time, and he's probably a top 20 guy for me in this class at this point.
I think he's almost 40% from three right now.
Yeah, so I would say Devin Carter can go probably, if a team fell in love and like needed point of attack defense and needed something that like could really, energy wise that could spur them. Devin Carter, I would say, could go, maybe like 14 or so if it went right. Okay, who is your favorite sleeper prospect right now? From Nabil.
Does Peyton Sandford count?
Sure. I like Peyton as a sleeper.
I love Peyton Sandford. This is one of the first guys I tweeted about going back to last year. He was 6th man of the year in the Big Ten. listen, you guys are all going to look him up because I'm going to talk about how great of a shooter he is. And you're going to be like, oh, he only shoots 37%. Just go watch the attempts. Go watch. I'm telling you,
obscenely difficult attempts. Yeah.
And 1 or 2 times a game, he's forced into a shot that is like a 5% shot for anybody in the world. So just take one miss away per game on just something silly he has to throw up. He's shooting like 60% from 2 right now. He's a good rebounder. The foot speed isn't great, but he's a good team defender. He's gotten better on that end. He'll get his body better through the pre-draft process. Like, I think this kid is a real draft pick this season because he has good size. He can really shoot it. He has a high feel and IQ. And I think he's going to wow teams in pre-draft workouts. Cause I think that like he's a 90% career free throw shooter. Like this kid can flat out shoot it. And I think he's really going to surprise people when they actually go turn on the film as well.
I'm going to answer Colin Murray Boyles here.
Let's go.
From South Carolina.
Yes.
I don't know if he's a 2024 or not yet. In all honesty, like I think that he probably is a 25. Like if you really made me say, I think he's probably a 25. But averaging 10 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, positive assist to turnover ratio, 58% from the field, 64% from the free throw line, 1 steal, about 1 block per game, 6'7", 7-foot wingspan easy. It looks like, right? Like could be more.
I've heard 7'2".
Yeah, like very plausible 7'2" wingspan. Originally like from the Columbia, South Carolina area, went to Wasatch over in Utah for his high school. Over his last 5 games, he's been phenomenal, averaging 19 points, 7 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 1.8 steals, about a block, 67% from the field in that time. I think the difference here is that he's probably more of a 2 and done because of the shooting.
Sure.
Like, I think this is a guy that really needs to shoot the basketball to be as impactful of a player as what he has potential to be. But man, he impacts the game across the spectrum with his length. He's super smart on defense. Has some baby fat that makes you believe that, he's really going to improve his overall quickness. Like laterally, he'll get beat sometimes, but man, like he has a chance to like really get in shape and like be an unbelievable physical presence that way. It's almost like, to me, like if you gave like Tennessee Grant Williams like a 7'2" wingspan, kind of.
Well, and I think he was sick to start the year as well, and so he kind of got off to a slow start with something. He's really interesting. This is a name I only came across recently, and I'm really glad I did. He's a ton of fun to watch. You talk about high feel and processing and IQ. He's pointing out things defensively, and he's like 18 until the summer as well, like super young kid, and one of those guys that kind of looks it as well. So I feel this kid is an NBA player in every way, and everybody I talk to, or not everybody I talk to, but there's like people you'll talk to who say like articles you read, like high school coaches saying this kid can shoot it. He can shoot it. The jumper's there. Like if that's true, he's really going to surprise people and be really good. I want to throw out one other name. We don't have to dive into it. We can only talk about so many Big Sky guys, but St. Thomas at Northern Colorado is a guy that's gotten interesting to me. That's where, Dalton Connect was at Northern Colorado last year, transferred to Tennessee. St. Thomas is having a really good year, a Loyola Chicago transfer with Northern Colorado and Greeley. So he's a kid, a sleeper guy that I'm kind of intrigued by and have been watching a little bit.
From Mateusz in the YouTube comments, what's your view on Jamal Shead as a prospect? I think very much draftable. Near the end of the second round, has a real chance to be like a backup point guard in the NBA. Consummate winner. Awesome defender. Unbelievable pick and roll defender for a guard. Fights around screens. Really has incredible anticipation to get deflections on kickouts and things like that. Just aggressive and smart in all the best ways. Offensively, it's coming around is probably the easiest way to say it. Really good passer and playmaker, has like a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, 5.8 assists per game. the jumper is going to be the key up until this season. He's never really made shots, but 35% from three this season on 3.6 attempts. Real chance, like maybe he goes back to school. He does have a COVID year, I believe. So yeah, like I'm a Jamal Shed fan.
Yeah, I can see it. Like I have a hard time betting it. Like you just love what these guys are coming out of Houston with. But like I said, as somebody that watches Marcus Sasser, throughout the size is an issue. Like I think sometimes people get frustrated that we talk about being 6'1", only being 6'1", or only being 6'2", or whatever. Marcus Sasser was a good defender, Sam, and I've seen like just his sheer size be an issue in the NBA. And then Sasser has some real on-ball juice in the shooting and all of that he had with his game. But that's also why he was into the first round. And we're talking about Shed at the end of the second round.
Yeah, like Sasser is a better prospect than Jamal Shed,
sure.
like for sure, just because of the scoring ability. But no, I mean Jamal Shed is a guy that like I really am quite interested in. Does Trenton Flowers have a chance of getting drafted? I mean, I guess like I think it'd have to be a team that like has a real plan for him. Like somewhere at the end of the second round is not impossible, but yeah, I mean Trenton, I don't know what's gonna happen there with Trenton, to be honest with you. Someone asked, does AJ Griffin have a chance of getting drafted? Or AJ Johnson, not AJ Griffin, I'm sorry. AJ Johnson for Illawarra, Trenton Flowers for Adelaide, both in the NBL. AJ Johnson, I think, has a better chance to get drafted, just better tools athletically, better. Yeah, like I just, AJ Johnson's like energy and his athleticism is way better. Trenton can really jump and can like really throw down on guys and like can get out in the open court. But I think AJ is like twitchier and like he can actually functionally use his athleticism a little bit better. Yeah, I think AJ does get drafted for what it's worth.
Okay, interesting. Because I've kept thinking like, and maybe it's just me thinking what's best for him is to go back and be a 2025 guy.
That would be unequivocally what is best for him.
Okay.
I think he should, no question. I think both of these kids should go back to the NBL and do the second year in the NBL. Like, no, 100% both of these kids should do that. But if neither of them are going back, that's the move to me is that.
And I will say, like, AJ stood out for me from the first time I watched him. Like, there was just a twitchiness and an energy, like you said, that was just different. It really stood out on the floor. But yeah, I would like to see both of them go back and hone their game and improve and grow. That's just me.
Has Coleman Hawkins helped or hurt his draft stock this season for you? Coleman Hawkins, 6'10", big at Illinois. Yeah, like 225, 230 pounds, something in that ballpark.
So here's what was his draft stock by the end of it last year? Second round. Draftable. Yeah. So I guess my thought was it had stayed roughly the same, maybe uptick like he has shot it better this year, which he's needed to do. Like, I think the actual numbers are better this year, but I still don't have him on my board much higher than that. Like, I still have him in that same range. So I guess I have a hard time saying it's improved. Is that unfair?
So Coleman's numbers are a little bit depressed by like his first 6 games just being like, just frankly, crazy, like dog bad shit. Like he did not play well. Over his last 17, he's averaged 14 points, 6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1.9 steals, 1.2 blocks, only 1.6 turnovers, which last year was a big deal. The turnover number was out of control because he was out of his mind throwing these like insane, high degree of difficulty passes. I think he's gotten that piece of his game under control. 44% from 3, 81% from the line, 47% from the field versus like the full season. He's at like 43, something like that. I think he's probably very slightly helped himself this year. I think the shooting being better definitely helps him. And I think that the decision-making being better definitely helps him. I still think he's like borderline draftable, and was very close to putting him on the mock is what I would say.
Yeah, no, I have him right there in that range, like into the second round. And so when you're in that range, in that tier, all it takes is a team to really believe in it or a team to really need that. like, again, I think we're still hashing out how many teams are going to need these type of players, that type of player. So yeah, like it's good to see him, shoot the ball well.
All right. I think that's where we're going to finish it, Bryce. I think that we've probably gone through like 35-ish questions, 30-ish questions, something like that, which is great. We appreciate you guys asking these questions. We're so glad that we got a chance to kind of run through some draft stuff today. It was really fun. We enjoy doing this. Like, we really enjoy like kind of helping people understand where this draft class sits, because it's hard. It's a really, really hard cycle right now. We'll probably do this again like in 3 weeks, because why wouldn't we? Heading into the tournament, like maybe we'll do it. Is like an interesting thing. So I'm excited about that. I think that's all I've got on my end. Bryce, do you have any strong takes you need to get off your chest before we go?
No, I think I've shot off enough of those. I don't like doing that anyway. Bold takes, predictions, that stuff. I try to avoid that stuff at all costs.
Sorry about that, Bryce. This is the takes business. You're going to have to give some takes at some point. Yeah, this has been the Game Theory Podcast. Go to The Athletic, subscribe over there. You know what's even lower stakes than subscribing at The Athletic? It's just hitting the subscribe on this YouTube channel here. Really helps. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the like button while you're here. It's great. It's super helpful. It helps us, raise in the rankings, whatever that whole system is. This is why we have Dave around to understand all of this for me, because I don't. Just keep it locked here. We'll be back at some point, probably on Sunday if you made me bet in the United States. Potentially Monday, because Bryce has things to do on Sunday, which I think you've told me and I have forgotten about already because my brain is a puddle. Yeah, that's all I've got. So keep it locked here. Until next time, we'll talk soon.